We are here at the Children's Museum, and Paul Taylor's ready to have a good time, aren't you, son?
I'm really looking forward to this. Very exciting.
Here we are at the Children's Museum, and the first place we stop is Dinosaur World. It's really cool. But notice they start right away with the millions of years. That's the preconceived idea. That's the problem that we're going to have to talk about.
Now, I grew up on a ranch in South Dakota. South Dakota's that state right there. There's Indiana where we are right now, and there's South Dakota. And 65 million years ago, lots of dinosaurs lived there. Now, there aren't any dinosaurs there anymore, but there are a lot of people, including my family and me. And the ranch where we grew up is right about there.
It's a femur.
How old is it?
Well, the dinosaur became extinct 65 million years ago, and that's as close as I can get you.
What is that thing?
It's part of, I believe, part of the vertebrae, and it's part of this guy, from the duckbill. And we think it's part of what's called the neurospine.
So how do they come up with the ages of the different things? How do they know that?
There's a few different ways of doing it. Radiometric dating is probably the most commonly used, and you actually date ash falls above and below where you're digging. So you can't, like the T-Rex femur you're leaning on there, you can't date that. But you date,
because it doesn't have ash fall above it or below it?
No, you date the ash fall above and below.
Oh, okay.
Piece, you can't date that. The issue we've got here, or any of this stuff here, you can't date this, but you date
above and below.
Above and below. And there are certain chemicals that you use that's been established back in the 1800s of half-lives. So you see how much half-life is left. That gets you in the ballpark of
about where you're at.
Hell Creek is 67 to 65 years.
And they found this, a T-Rex collarbone. Now, of course, it's a little bit different, you know, than our collarbones. They've just got one. The shape is a little bit different. On a T-Rex, it's actually called a furcula or a wishbone. Oh, actually, can any of you think of an animal that's alive today that has a wishbone? Yeah, what do you think? She says a turkey. You're right. Turkeys, chickens, birds have wishbones. This might not seem like a big deal to all of you, but for people who study dinosaurs, this was big news, because this furcula showed scientists that T-Rex, that absolute king of all the dinosaurs, was related to modern-day chickens. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it sounds kind of funny, right? But you chop off that tail, file down those teeth, you got yourself a gigantic a chicken-dosaurus, I guess.
Well, apparently this bone is very important. It's a sort of wishbone. So they're saying that this is the wishbone of a dinosaur, and that is being used as evidence that birds evolved from this Tyrannosaurus. Fascinating, isn't it? Let's try and see if we can get hold of either end of the wishbone, pull it with our little fingers and make a wish. I wish this dinosaur was 65 million years old. No, it doesn't work.
This is the dig site map for one of the T-Rexes that I found. And if you look at that map there, you can see all those little black spots all over represent where we found all the T-Rex's bones. Now, look at the way all those bones are laid out there. Anyone have an idea what kind of looks so strange about that? It's water that did it. This place is located in a wash. That's an area where a lot of water rushes through sometimes when it floods. And all that water rushing through scattered those bones all over the place. Now, like I said before, it can sometimes be hard to find all the bones that you need to put a whole skeleton together. Like this, you can see that you might find one over here one day, and then have to look for days and days and days before you find another one all the way over there. And who knows where they go together? They're not all in the right places, right? So you can see that it would be pretty easy to miss some pieces, right?
A lot of fossils in museums are put together like this, and it's perfectly fair. I'm not criticising this point, but you see with this Triceratops here, it is not all fossil. Most of it is fossil, but there are various bits of it that are cast because they've not been able to find them. They've looked at other fossils of the same thing and compared it. The legs, the jawbone, and the end of the tail are all casts. And one of the things you need to remember that isn't always obvious when you're looking at these things in museums is, of course, they were not dug out of the ground looking like this. They were not stood up when they died. They were at the very least lying down, almost certainly crushed, almost certainly in the majority of cases incomplete. I would say that the overwhelming majority of them incomplete. So there has been a guessing game. Now, this is a perfectly fair guessing game. I'm not criticising that, but we need to understand that, because when you come to some of the other things that they claim to know about the fossils, there are going to be problems. You've got to remember that they've done a lot of guessing.
So what do we have here, Paul?
We've got a representation of marine invertebrates somewhere in Indiana. And what's interesting about this is it's giving children the impression that this is unusual, whereas in fact it's not unusual. 95% of all the world's fossils are marine invertebrates like this. They're using it as evidence of an ancient sea in Indiana. It's far more likely that this is evidence for global flood, with invertebrates like this being washed up onto the continents in the very early stages of the flood.
All right, we are here at the dinosaur exhibit, and it is really cool. They got some incredible stuff here. One of the main things they're trying to teach the kids, other than the millions of years, is to look for clues in the fossils. So they've got all the dinosaurs set up, and they're telling the kids, hey kids, look for clues. What do we know about this fossil based on what we see? So neat. However, they take it way too far. For example, the one behind me right here, they try to say, hey, what are the clues? It was found, a meat eater was found next to a plant eater. Obviously, it was scavenging on it. And they're trying to teach the kids to look for that kind of stuff. But that takes it way farther than we really can take it.
Most of this is based on a little bit of circumstantial evidence. For example, there have been some Triceratops fossils found with grooves in them that they suspect look a bit similar to the shape of T-Rex teeth, but it's very, very circumstantial. You can't really prove that this sort of behaviour necessarily went on. So again, it's showing how there's a lot of imagination and storytelling used to build up the evolutionary accounts of how the fossils were behaving. Well, we've got here a cast of the Sarcosuchus, or super croc, and according to the board here, it says this was 110 million years ago that this was living in the rivers of Africa. Probably one of the interesting things about this, however, it's one of the probably the best candidates for what the Leviathan was in Job chapter 41. Well, this dinosaur is a problem for the theistic evolutionists. This is Gorgosaurus. There's a few things on here that they've produced which are, again, perfectly fair. You'll notice that her right leg is broken and it doesn't seem to have healed. The other thing that the display has drawn our attention to is that she's got a tumour in her brain. Now, a theistic evolutionist is a Christian who believes that God has used evolution. So they've got to believe that tumours, cancer, disease, injuries, pain and death all occurred before Adam sinned. And that's a problem. It's a theological problem. There are certain clues that they have when they pick up fossils which are fair enough, but the interpretation that the evolutionist makes is different from the interpretation that the creationist would make. For example, look at the environment in this particular scene. You've got the fossils of the dinosaurs and you've got gymnosperm plants, non-flowering plants, fern-like type things. They're always found together in the fossil record. So the evolutionists will interpret that and say they're from the same time scale, they use them as dating methods. We would not. We would say that this basically means that you've got an environmental issue, an ecosystem issue, that these dinosaurs were found in a part of the world where there were non-flowering plants. That's the place that they'd liked to live. So it's the same clue, different interpretation, because we have different starting points in our interpretation.
We're here at the dragons section, and I'm fascinated that they even mention the dragons here, because most places won't do that. But they say, hey, are dragons real, or are they only in stories? And they portray them as only in stories, inspired by possibly the bones of dinosaurs. It's much more likely that they were inspired by real dinosaurs. People saw these dinosaurs, and they were inspired to do this, or that dragons are real. Pretty cool.
Here's an interesting, fairly new find, obviously a new exhibit in this museum. It's called Dracorex Hogwartsia, presumably named after the dragons in the Harry Potter movies and books. It says on the display that it says when they saw this creature's head, they weren't quite sure what kind of dinosaur it was. It's got spiky horns, it's got bones, it's got a long muzzle, and it looks more like a dragon. It seems to be a relative of the more well-known dinosaur Pachycephalosaurus. It says in fact it's a new type of dinosaur, a member of the bonehead family or Pachycephalosaurs. And it says these plant eaters are best known for butting each other with their thick skulls. Well, let's just have a look close up at the dinosaur, because its head does look rather like the traditional picture of a dragon. And of course the main idea in this particular museum is that dinosaurs are what created the myths and so on about dragons. But isn't it more likely that this sort of thing could perhaps have actually been seen by people, therefore it would sort of render that image in people's heads? If you look at the head itself, you can see sort of two chambers at the top, because one of the things about Pachycephalosaur dinosaurs is that these have got chambers in the skull. Now some people suggested it might be somewhat similar to the chambers in a bombardier beetle that could actually ignite and cause a fire-breathing explosion, which again would fit with this dinosaur perhaps being some sort of dragon. But I do want you to notice that they talk about these plant eaters being best known for butting each other with their thick skulls, because this brings us back to how do they know this? If you're looking at fossils, how can they possibly know that these animals butted each other like goats do? All they can do is say, well, we know what goats look like. Goats have thick skulls. They butt each other. These things have thick skulls. Therefore, they must butt each other. It's a storytelling that they're doing. They're telling a story, but it actually has no bearing necessarily on real fact. It's not that I'm saying that it doesn't happen. It might have happened, but it is a story, and you really can't say that that is something that you've definitely found out from the bones itself. Having come into another science area of the Children's Museum, you can see here what happens if you leave glass bottles around, water, blue dye and a few green lights. Given a good long period of time, a clock like this will evolve from those elements.
You want to touch T-Rex? You can. You can touch T-Rex. It's quieter over here. There you go. Good job. Like sandblasting, it helps clean the dirt off.
So it leaves the bone and takes the dirt off?
Well, it'll chew the bone up too if you go right at it, but typically this is all bone. The chocolate brown's all bone, and I'm just trying to get more of a definition of where the bone's going into this dirt before as I clean it off. See, there's bone here. That piece looks like it's been displaced from right here to me. So I don't think it'll be joined there. And it's pretty well shattered. And then eventually I'll figure out where it'll reattach to this. But it's one of the, it's in the back. And if you look down in there, can you tell? Can you see down in here how it kind of creates a cavity or a hole? Yeah. That's where the spinal cord
would have run through?
Yeah, would have run right through there. But until I cut it out a little bit more, I won't know. But I know it this could go here or it could be over here. I don't know yet. But there's bone right here too. There's bone here. So little by little I'll get it out of there and get rid of this dirt. And then maybe if there's enough definition I can reattach it to this.